What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my comprehensive analysis and review of the Embla and Legendary Veronica banner. In this video I'll be going over the tier list of both Dark Mythics and Wind Legendary units, and I'll be going over the build options for both of these units as well. So let us begin with Embla, the goddess of the dark season, because she is just really insane. So she's a flying red beast and she can open up the 7th slot in the dark season and also boost up the resistance of your dark blessed allies. And the reason why she is so strong is because she can counter one of the main strats directly in Aether Raid's offense, which is safe tanking. So that makes her an incredibly meta option and also just a very powerful unit to summon, because when you're countering one of the main strats in the game, that is really insane, especially when we have not really seen anything like this before. So her weapon is Enclosing Claw, which gives her -1 special cooldown. So Draconic Aura becomes a 2 cooldown special, and she can get +5 to all of her stats, and also Null Guard in the combat. So getting Null Guard is really helpful because a lot of the tanks do have the guard effect, or they run these stance 3 skills. So having this Null Guard means that you can nuke them with your special, and then she can also debuff opponents' attack speed and defense by -3 at the very least. And she can debuff this up to -9 depending on the foes that are present within 3 rows and 3 columns centered on Embla. So she can get a lot of debuffs in the combat against the opponents, which does make her very scary. And then she can get guard and also the defensive half of Null Follow-Up if there are 2 or more foes present within the 3 row and 3 column space centered on Embla. So this kind of range is similar to what we had in the Weapon of Arvel. It is pretty similar to that, and it's honestly pretty big. So as long as you position her well in your Aether Raid's defense team, most of the time she's going to be able to get the guard effect and also the half Null Follow-Up and a lot of debuffs on the opponent. So having the defensive half of the Null Follow-Up is really good because you can stop the opponents from making auto follow-up attacks, which means that a lot of these slow units which have auto follow-up attack or fighter skills are just not going to be able to double her, and she is already so fast and also has damage reduction that a lot of times she's just going to be surviving, and her survival is going to be bolstered by the guard effect which she can get out of this weapon. So this weapon is really good, and because she's a flying beast unit, being a bat, she has got the Flyer Beast transformation where she can get +1 movement and +2 attack when she transforms. And oh boy, she's going to be transforming almost all of the time because she's got Beast Agility 3, which is a new beast exclusive skill. So this allows a beast unit to remove their condition to transform, so they can transform beside anyone, and this is really good for Aether Raid's defense because not always you can have her beside a beast unit or a dragon unit, and leaving her alone is also not viable many times. So this makes her a pretty consistent Aether Raid's defense unit who's always going to be transforming to get that 3 movement. And this skill also has the other half of Null Follow-Up, which is the offensive version, and it allows her to pierce through the follow-up negation effects only when she has got more speed than the opponent, and that is not going to be too hard because Embla has got like base 44 speed. So yeah, Beast Agility is a pretty good option here for Embla, and as it is, beast units don't really have too many good options in the slot B, especially flying beast units. So you don't really want to run a trace skill for her in the Aether Raid's defense, so this skill is perfect. And now we move on to the main meat of the video, which is her slot C skill Severance, and the reason why she is so powerful and so many people are going to be trying to summon her. Severance is a slot C skill which can trigger at start of the turn, and it can inflict the feud effect and the undefended status on the foes within 3 columns and 3 rows centered on Embla. So again, the same range as Arvel, and the feud effect is actually a status effect that you can see, which we did see in the trailer itself, and the undefended status pretty much makes it so that no safe skill can protect that unit who's affected by the status. So if you're affected by that, it pretty much means that you're not going to be able to save tank as easily. She can also get the dodge status and debuff neutralization if there is 1 foe in 3 rows or 3 columns centered on Embla. So it's pretty easy to get the dodge effect on her, which can actually make her deceptively bulky with her weapon and the kind of speed stat that she has got, and she pretty much ends up having like a full Null Follow-Up with this base kit. So being that fast, getting Null Follow-Up and dodge is pretty reminiscent of a lot of units in this game. The main thing about this skill is definitely the status that you can inflict on the opponent, because the feud status pretty much makes it so that everyone is like a Bramimond on your team against the opponent who has got this kind of status. So they're going to be ignoring any kind of skills that the target unit does not have and they're getting supported by. So if the target foe has got drive attack support, the field skill is simply going to be ignoring that. And the undefended status is even bigger because it just means that they cannot really save tank all that easily now. And it was pretty absurdly easy to stack up a lot of support on your save tanks and even tank a lot of teams. And that's why Brattle Catria was such a popular unit in Aether 8's defense, where you could just use a lot of tank busters and get past those save units. But with Embla, like, you don't really have to run Brattle Catria. You can just run a Cav line with like Legendary Seeker and a bunch of Cavaliers. And because the opponent cannot really use the save skill if they're affected by the status effect of undefended, they cannot really, take care of those annoying Cavalier units. And this also means that if an opponent has got 2 Emblas, they can basically cover the entire map. So your save skill is worthless there. So I can definitely see a couple of Cav lines running like 2 Embla so that you can pretty much not use any kind of save skill against a Cav line. There are of course other ways of beating a Cav line as well, but those teams are definitely going to be making a comeback. The high threat range teams with like Note, Legendary Seeker, Duo Dagr, all of that stuff, because it's not going to be as easy to, save tank against a well-made team like that. Of course, you can, tank in the part where Embla cannot debuff you, but a lot of the times it is going to be pretty hard. And Light Season as it is actually pretty challenging because of the Brattle Catcher teams, Medius, and now we also have Embla making it harder. And Yune also got a really good remix. So yeah, she is of course much better than Arvel as a mythic unit herself because there's no Elemine in the Dark Season, so you cannot really false start Embla and stop these effects. Of course, if they make another, version of Elemine like Winter Elemine, similar to how they made Winter Altina with Mythic Altina's exclusive skills, that could be, one of the ways of stopping Embla because she doesn't have that high of a resistance, but I'm not really too sure. I may be ahead of myself. So because of lack of Elemine, this kind of status effect is going to be pretty easy to go off, and it is going to be definitely messing up a lot of players that heavily rely on the save skills. And as it is, hit and run is not really all that easy in the Light Season because good teams are going to be having Canto Control Medius. So Gale Force is a pretty good strategy that you can try and use. I always use Gale Force. So personally, I'm not really affected too much by Embla. She is, going to be having that dodge, but because at the end of the day, she doesn't really have that kind of raw bulk with someone like Medius has got over like his damage reduction. But I'm not really too sure if I really like the way of going about things with, a skill like this. That did happen with Elemine as well, so it's a really, really hard counter to a certain thing. And we have seen the consequences of that in the, anime season, as we can see, with Elemine just shutting down so many defensive archetypes. So similar to that, Embla just shuts down a really main offensive archetype in save tanking. And Omni tanking is also going to be pretty hard because you cannot really support your Omni tank, with something like a Brave Lucina, for example, because the feud skill is just going to be ignoring that. You can still support them with like bonus doubler effect from Legendary Eliwood because that's a status effect on the unit itself. So someone like Brave Dimitri is still going to be a potent Omni tank, for example, but most of the teams are going to be having things to deal with him, and there's still going to be the feud effect and, the debuffs flying around with Yune. Overall, I think that Embla is an incredibly powerful mythic, and she just shuts down the save unit. So obviously she's going to be the best dark mythic that is going to be available. So this is definitely one of the ways of strengthening your Aether 8's defense and also shutting down the save units. And she's also going to be having applications outside of Aether 8's defense because she can actually work in Aether 8's offense in the Chaos season. And she can also shut down the enemy far save units, which can open up the usage of like Lethality Yuri or like Duo Nina. And same goes for Summoner Duels depending on the map and if it allows her to easily trigger her Severance. But in Summoner Duel, she will have to face Ymir, who can just cleanse the status effect like Undefended and the feud skill from her allies. So Ymir has definitely become a lot stronger against Embla if you do decide to use her in Summoner Duels. So you have to watch out for her. So she's definitely going to be having usage more than Aether 8's defense if you do decide to get her. And I think that she's just really, really absurdly strong because of shutting down the save units, which majority of the people use as a strategy. So now people will have to rely on other strategies like maybe Gale Force, or maybe using Summer Edelgard for hit and run, or using Summer Thor, because Embla is always going to be transformed. So if she's affected by the stalled status, then she is going to be having her movement reduced. And same goes for Legendary Sigurd. But Legendary Sigurd is actually slow, so it's a lot easier to affect him with the stalled status of any kind of unit. Embla is definitely a lot faster, so I guess if you're using Embla on your Aether Raid's defense, then do put her away from the slowest unit on your Aether Raid's defense so that she's not affected by it. So Embla definitely allows a lot more flexibility to your Aether Raid's defense, because you don't really have to, stick with Brattle Catcher teams, and now you can experiment with other teams, because a lot of the times people are not going to be able to use the saves against Embla and your team. So yeah, Legendary Sigurd is definitely back on the menu. And when it comes to her builds, I think Attack Speed Clash and Beast Agility is going to be fine for the, basic budget build. But if you are trying to invest a bit more into her, then Surge Sparrow could work as well, because she does have the Null Guard effect in her weapon. So that is really helpful for triggering the specials and getting the healing, which is of course going to be increasing her longevity. And Flying Beast units don't really have too many options, so if you are going to be using her in something like Summoner Duels, then she could be run with the Neotrace skill. And in Aether Raid's offense, in the Chaos season, she could be used as a Gale Force unit because of the Severance, the status that she can inflict on the opponent, and the fact that she's got Null Guard and she can easily transform as a base flyer and have 3 movement. So those things are definitely the strengths of Embla, and she doesn't really take too much of the fodder because her base kit is already pretty good. And when it comes to her fodder, Attack Speed Clash 4 is actually a pretty good skill that flyers, cavalry units, and infantry units can make amazing use of. Of course, the Cavaliers with 3 movement are going to be the natural users of this, but even flyers and infantry units with the Oath Force skill can use the Clash skill, because the Clash skill does count the movement even if you teleport. So with the Oath Force skills, it does become pretty good skill for giving you offenses and also for giving you that debuff neutralization to your attack and speed. And Beast Agility is a new skill, which I think that the best users of it are going to be Raisin and Leon, because they can essentially be a 3 movement dancer, and they could be useful in Aether Raid's defense with that kind of skill, because they are already going to be having the orders buff from something like Brattle Catria, for example. They're going to be missing out on Wings of Mercy, but having a permanent 3 movement dancer is actually pretty good. That's not, Harmonic Azura or Duo Sigurd, who can get baited out pretty easily. So if you're using some kind of rally trap, or you just want to have a 3 movement dancer, then Beast Agility is going to be a pretty good skill on these 2 units. And they also have the speed to make use out of the, offensive null follow up if they do end up attacking someone. Let's move on to my Dark Mythic tier list. So like I said, I think that Embla is the best Dark Mythic, so she's going to be here in the tier 1. Absolutely no doubts about that, because shutting down save units is definitely a pretty big thing, which no other Mythic can really do. So her potential is definitely pretty good there, and like I said, she can function in Aether Raid's Chaos and also in Summoner Duels. And in tier 1, we also have Medius, who is really incredible with his On Guard, because it can protect you against a lot of the bold tower strategies, and that is really useful if you have a low threat range team with like a Brattle Catria. So he can be really good with that, and he can also be really bulky with the damage reduction and his raw bulk, and can be very hard to kill at times, even for many of the Gale Force initiators. In tier 2, I have Yune. Now, Yune has got an amazing remix and refine, and she can actually be a really annoying unit to not only face in combat, but also just even without that, she can just debuff globally with her Slotsy skill now, and also Panic. So with her refine, she does have the proxy dominance, so in a way she can easily get the extra damage and also get the damage reduction, so she can be really annoying in that aspect. And the debuffs, flying, and the panic and everything is just really chaotic mixed in with Embla and Medius and what they bring to the table. We also have Note here in the tier 2. Note definitely is a lot stronger now with Embla being a thing, because Note can be run with Embla and can enable a lot of the cavalry teams, because she does have that Pathfinder. And she's also pretty useful in Aether Raid's Chaos just for the Pathfinder teams, and also in Summoner Duels as a frontliner, because she is fast with that bonus doubler weapon and also can get that damage reduction. And her blue color is definitely pretty good to face off someone like Brave Seliph, and she can stack up that amount of speed, so that is really helpful. In tier 3, I do have units which are not necessarily bad, but it's just that the units above them are really strong. So don't really assume that tier 3 units are bad or anything like that in any of my tier list. So here we have got Triandra as the Mythic Dancer. She does have the Ruse Dance and can actually hit decently hard, but of course not hard enough against many of the Firesweep tanks, but definitely I guess if she can catch your opponents off guard. And having a Mythic Dancer is always going to be pretty good, but the thing is that we do have Mila who can usually isolate a dancer like her. So a lot of times using Dancer Eldigan is going to be more consistent dancing for your team than Triandra, and there's definitely no shortage of good Dark Mythic units as you can see above her. Even Yune now after her remix who can provide incredible debuffs and support. Then we have got Bramimond, and they have fallen quite a bit because they do struggle against a lot of the safe tanks. Embla is there to support and help, but then again Embla can pretty much make anyone into a Bramimond because she can inflict the feud status on the enemy. So Impenetrable Dark of Bramimond is no longer that unique. So I hope that Bramimond can get some kind of remix that can make it so that they can ignore the safe skills, which would be quite an upgrade. And if you look above like Bramimond, all of the other mythics provide some kind of support to your team and they're just not combat centric like Bramimond. Speaking of combat mythics, we have got 2 of them in tier 4 and they're just so heavily outclassed by the other mythics that it's not even worth running them unless it's their bonus season. And even if it's their bonus season, like they're still not going to be strong enough to really stand out. Hell doesn't really get any kind of extra stats, or Miracle is pretty much the main gimmick. But we have a lot stronger support here in the Dark season, and so this is Refine was definitely a bit lackluster, so she's going to be staying here in tier 4. November is the double OC month in FEH, and we have got Legendary Veronica color sharing with Embla. So unfortunately, Elm just got sent to the Shadow Realm along with the boys, Freyr, Fafnir, and Bruno. So yeah, we have got Legendary Veronica as a Red Mage Cavalier and as a Wind Legendary unit. And she's definitely very powerful, and she can also deal with a lot of the far safe tanks pretty well because of her special, and she's going to be quite unique as a Mage Cavalier. So she's got Enclosing Dark as her preferred weapon, and this has got -1 special cooldown built into it. So Enclosure, her preferred special, becomes a 1 cooldown special. And she also has the Dive Bomb effect, so she doesn't really have to run Desperation in her slot B, and she can also get +6 attack and speed in combat, and the half null follow-up effect, which has just amazing synergy with the Dive Bomb effect that she's got in her weapon. So having half null follow-up built into her weapon is really good with the Dive Bomb effect, and especially when ranged cavaliers cannot have access to the flow skills. And the other effects on her weapon actually work depending on the foes that are in 2 spaces of the target foe. So if there's 1 foe present, then she can inflict -4 speed and resistance debuff on her target foe. And if there are 2 or more foes present within 2 spaces of her target foe, then she can inflict -8 speed and resistance debuff on them, and she also gets the Firesweep effect against them. So she doesn't even have to run Windsweep in her slot B to, just get that sweep effect. She's going to be having Firesweep, which is much better than running Windsweep in the slot B for a lot of the partial null follow-up units, because you're still going to be susceptible to dragons, and we do have dragons with the distant counter Dragon Sacred Seal. So with this weapon alone, she's going to be a pretty strong legendary unit, but she also has her preferred special in Enclosure. So I don't really think that this is inheritable because Veronica doesn't really have any other preferred skill in her base kit, and Enclosure does become a 1-turn special with her weapon, so she can actually trigger this on her follow-up attack, and it's pretty easy for her to make the follow-up attack with her kind of speed and the fact that she's got partial null follow-up and the Dive Bomb effect. So this is going to be easily triggered, especially with the null guard built into the special itself. So Enclosure works kind of similar to Draconic Aura in boosting up the damage by unit's attack, and whenever she can trigger her special, she can pierce through the damage reduction skills which are non-special based. So this pretty much means that she can pierce through the damage reduction of Dragon Wall, through the Close Call, Repel, Spurn, all of those speed-based damage reduction skills like Vital Astra, but she's not going to be able to pierce through Godlike Reflexes, Aegis, or Negating Fang, and of course the flat damage reduction that we have got on Brave Dimitri and Asker. So Enclosure is pretty incredible as a special because mages do lack this kind of special to pierce through the damage reduction, and a lot of times they're just going to be getting walled by a lot of Hardy Fighter and Deflect Magic far safe tanks, but That is not going to be the case with Veronica because her first attack is going to be eating up their defensive special with Hardy Fighter, and if they have Deflect Magic, then she's just going to be piercing through the damage reduction with this special, which is really amazing. And if they have Dragon Wall or any kind of other damage reduction skill, then this is also going to be just cutting through that. So Veronica can function as a really amazing Mage Cavalier because of being able to pierce through the damage reduction and also having this incredible weapon which provides her with the Firesweep effect and also the Dive Bomb and half null follow-up. So she's going to be doing a lot better than a lot of the other Mage Cavaliers, and of course we do have blue tanks like Brave Dimitri, Ascended Idun, and Brave Hector, but even then they cannot really retaliate back against her or kill her in that same round of combat, so she's going to be pretty solid. And she does have attack speed catch 4, speed resistance fortress, and also the tier 4 version of the Panic Smoke skill. So Panic Smoke is rather niche skill, and same goes for the tier 4 version of this skill because it is going to be only triggering after the combat. It doesn't really trigger before the combat like a Menace skill, or triggers at start of the turn like the Oath skill. So the usability of the skill is going to be a bit limited because you have to enter a combat to get the Spectrum debuff on the opponent for -3 and also inflict panic on the target and foes within 2 spaces of them. And now the tier 4 version of the skill actually gives you the Pelagian status effect to yourself and the allies in the cardinal direction. So foe penalty doubler is basically the Pelagian effect, which is going to be stacking up with other Pelagian weapons, so this is going to be useful on a couple of units. I'll definitely go over that in a couple of moments. Overall, Veronica is a pretty good Mage Cavalier and amazing Wind Legendary unit because she pretty much has everything that a player phase Mage Cavalier would want and that a lot of Mage Cavaliers don't really have access to. So she is going to be working fine with her base kit, but you can definitely try out some different options like Loud Speed Resistance if you run her on Aether Raid's defense. And of course, in Summoner Duels, she's also going to be having her applications because far safe tanks are going to be quite common there, and Duma can still decharge her enclosure, so you have to watch out for him, but still he can only retaliate back to you, and he can safely pulse down a lot of the pre-charged specials in Summoner Duels. In Arena, she's going to be pretty incredible as a Wind Legendary unit with her player phase and the enclosure that she has got, and of course in Aether Raid's defense, it is definitely going to be pretty annoying when you pair her up with someone like Embla or Yune who can already annoy the opponents quite a lot. As for the fodder, she does have attack speed catch 4, speed resistance fortress, and panic smoke. If you do have newer Liar, then you can pretty much get the version 3 of attack speed catch. Then you can just get the tier 4 version of this skill with the fortress at the same time, and you can always get the panic smoke and fortress at the same time if you just fodder off another unit who does have the version 3 of panic smoke. Panic Smoke 4 is best used on units who can make use out of the debuffs, so Pelagian weapon users like Mail Morgan and Legendary Lucina are really good recipients of this skill because they already have the full Pelagian effect in their weapon, and this can actually stack up with their weapon so they can get more bang for their buck essentially with the debuffs that they can do. And someone like Legendary Lucina can already give you the Future Vision utilities, so she can get the debuffs before her combat, which is really good. And then she can, after the combat, use Panic Smoke 4 and provide the Pelagian effect to herself and other allies. Guntra has got the Broadleaf Fan effect and the Pelagian effect built into her weapon, so she can definitely benefit a lot from Panic Smoke 4. And you can also run this on Hilda because she does have the debuffs out of her weapon, so she can still, get something out of it for the dominance in her first combat when Panic Smoke 4 is not activated. And then after that, she's going to be able to get a lot of the debuffs and make use of the dominance herself, especially if you run her with a couple of dancers or if she just tanks in the enemy phase. Dragor is definitely a unit worth mentioning because he's not a mage and he actually has a very unique effect which can trigger both at sort of his player phase and at sort of his enemy phase. So this is going to be really good for getting the debuffs here, and they can stack up with the panic debuffs that he can do with the Panic Smoke 4. So Pelagian weapon users are of course going to be eating good. And if you have a broadly fan weapon like Arvis for example, then this could also be an option that you can run. So it is mostly going to be useful on the units who already make use out of the debuffs as is, and this is going to be just helping them stack it up with their weapon. But still, you're not going to be seeing this skill too much, I think, because it's a rather niche skill and there are going to be many units with debuff neutralization weapons and debuff neutralization effects along with Null Panic getting a bit easier to get, I suppose. This effect is going to be activating when you enter the combat, so you have to enter a combat and then give the penalty doubler to yourself and the allies in the cardinal direction. When it comes to my win tier list, I'm going to be putting Veronica in tier 1 because she just does everything a unit would want in the player phase. So her player phase is going to be really incredible with her enclosure and her weapon, and she also scores like a 195 BST unit at max. And there's also the fact that she's a Mage Cavalier, so her threat range is actually pretty big. So you can definitely force a lot of the enemy units to just go through the rally loops because of that threat range. And if you use her with a Dancer, then she can just clean up the units pretty easily. But of course you have to watch out for the trench maps, which are going to be rather common. And she's definitely going to be pretty annoying unit to tank. And we also have Legendary Ymir in tier 1 because she is the highest scoring legendary unit in the game. With all of the dragon slot B skills and distant counter dragon sacred seal. And she also has the warp bubble effect, which definitely has applications in Aether Raid's offense against a lot of the Bridal Catria teams, and also in Summoner duels against Ashe and Bridal Catrias, which are going to be seen especially in Summoner duels S. So she can frontline in Summoner duels rather decently well actually because of her blue color and the fact that she can take on Brave Seliph, but not really going to be able to kill him or even speed stack enough to speed tie with him, but still a decent frontline unit. And then we have the beast of a support unit in Legendary Eliwood. Now he doesn't really score as much as any of these other tier 1 units, but arena scoring is not the only thing here on this tier list. Support matters a lot, and in arena he can score like a 180 BSC unit, but outside of arena he just is just so amazing for any kind of game mode with his support. And of course in Summoner duels and in Aether Raid's offense, he's going to be really solid. And especially now that Omni tanking is going to be seen a bit more because of Embla, he can definitely support the Omni tanking ally with the bonus doubler effect and the Null Panic. So that is going to be useful, especially with the Yune and her panic and everything. And we also have Legendary Sigurd in tier 2. So times have definitely changed. I don't really think that Legendary Sigurd is tier 1. Embla definitely makes Legendary Sigurd a bit better in Aether Raid's offense because it's a lot easier to have those kinds of Pathfinder teams, but keep in mind that we do have the stalled status, and Legendary Sigurd is going to be a pretty easy unit to fall to that stalled status because of his low speed, unlike his son who does have pretty high speed and can actually avoid the stalled status of units like Duo Thor, for example, if you just place your units correctly. So Legendary Sigurd, despite being really strong, is still in tier 2, which is not really all that bad. It's just that he's not as insane as he once was, but Embla definitely helps him quite a bit. I also have Legendary Female Byleth in tier 2. She's borderline tier 3, I suppose, like tier 2, tier 3, because she doesn't really have a special that can pierce through the damage reduction like her male counterpart, but still she does have a bit more unique support in the drive tempo effect. And Legendary Male Byleth's drive null follow-up is not really all that unique anymore because we definitely have a lot more ways of getting null follow-up, and we also have null follow-up Sacred Seal. So her support can definitely help you a lot against many of the threats, and she can function decently well in arena as well, and also in Summoner duels. In tier 3, again, I'm going to be repeating myself that just because a unit is in tier 3 does not mean that they are a bad unit, and Legendary Lucina is definitely not a bad unit. I have her at almost plus and merge on my free-to-play account, and she is just really helpful with future vision and the mobility. So especially in arena, she's going to be really useful because you're mainly going to be running the rally plus skills, so having any kind of movement utility is definitely going to be pretty good. And she's not going to be hitting as hard as someone like Legendary Alm for destroying a lot of the far safe tanks, but still her weapon refine and remix is still quite good, and she can function with the dual skill in arena. We also have Freed with his remix and refine, and he can also provide the support to your allies, especially with the guard status that he can inflict with his slot B skill. So that is pretty unique as a support, and also the fact that he can take advantage of the debuffs with his weapon. We also have Legend Corrin in tier 3, even though she's like a year away from her remix and refine. The reason being is that she actually scores pretty well now because of the dragon slot B skills and also because of distant counter dragon. So she scores 195 BST, just as much as newest, legendary that we have got in Legendary Veronica. So that is pretty incredible when it comes to the scoring. Sure, she's not going to be as insane as Halloween female Corrin, but still, she does have the scoring in the bag for the Colosseum game modes, and she does have access to that Negating Fang, and also, can run the finish skills as well. And tier 3 is just not going to be limited to these 3 units. We also have legendary Micaiah and Gunthra in this. Now keep in mind that my tier 3 is not really ordered, because it's pretty hard to order these units within the tiers, and it's just going to be different for many people. But yeah, legendary Micaiah can nuke also really well in the player phase, but she doesn't really have something like enclosure of legendary Veronica to pierce through the damage reduction, but of course the effective damage is pretty helpful. Gunthra does have the debuffs going on for her, and she can definitely hit pretty hard and also provide the support to her teammates, and her weapon has got the Plagian effect and the Broadleaf Fan effect, but it's just that we have a lot of debuff neutralization units and also a lot of far safe tanks that can not get doubled by her, and if they are running Hardy Fighter and a defensive special, then they can easily tank her despite the insane damage output that she can try and get. In tier 4, I've got legendary Lyn, and honestly, this kind of tier 4 is not really the same as the tier 4 of Dark Mythics, because legendary Lyn is still pretty good after her remix and refine, and I've used her quite a lot, so she can function in like Ether Raid's defense or Summoner duels, and with the Laws of Sakai too. But the thing is that there are a lot better far safe tank busters, like legendary Alm for example, and we also have Veronica in this banner itself as a wind legendary unit, and we also have many of the higher scoring units. So with Lyn, you need to have Laws of Sakai 2 for Arena, and that is not the best thing when you need to have the scoring when it's really hard to stay in tier 21. So that's why she's in tier 4, and even her summer version, which recently got a weapon refine, can bust through a lot of the safe tanks with the null guard effect that she has got, especially through Duo Duma, which is a meta far savior. Overall, this banner has got the best color sharing in the red color, with the Wind Legendary unit and the Earth Legendary unit being top tiers, and also incredible Embla as the Dark Mythic unit. Blue is the next best option, with Earth and Water Legends color sharing in Deirdre and Caeda. So if you're trying to finish their merge projects, then they could be an option, but unfortunately Seiros might be a dud for many people. And then green and colorless are kind of the equal, depending on if you want Ymir more or you want Ascended Celica more. It does have color sharing with some of the older units, so it might be a miss for many people. And next month we are going to be having book 7, the new book, and also new OC, with maybe a new rearmed hero as well in that banner, because the rest of the December is going to be having the seasonal banners. So a new rearmed hero is definitely going to be something many people might want to look forward to. So you could wait until then, because we are probably going to be getting FEH Channel. So who knows if they might release any kind of new competitive game mode or any kind of new unit that you might want to pull for. So it's worth waiting for, especially if you're a free-to-play player. But Embla is definitely a pretty strong bait, I suppose, if you do care about Ether Raid's defense. And we are going to be having a Christmas banner in December, of course, which usually ends up having a spark even for the non-FEH pass users. So people can try and spark, and New Year banner is also going to be there. And we are going to be getting a new Fire Legendary unit next month, and also Choose Your Legend 6 units are going to be rerun for the very first time. But then after that, they're going to be rerun on the anniversary, I believe, in like a Hero Fest banner. So it is going to be having pretty good color sharing, and the new OC might be actually blue, because usually try and have the newest legendary unit color sharing with the other latest legendary unit, which was legendary Ninian here. So blue OC does make sense to me because of that logic. And it could also be a new rearmed OC, because they have put Ganglot as an OC who never appeared before with an arcane weapon. So anything could happen, but just this is my educated guess. So now let's move on to the other units present on this banner, and I'll quickly give you summary on each of them. Legendary Nanna is one of the best sword cavaliers in the game because of the fact that how hard she can nuke, and she just does not care about any kind of damage reduction or even the special damage reduction from stuff like Pavis or Escutcheon. So she's really unique in that regard and doesn't even care about negating Fang or just life unending of legendary Fae. So that weapon of hers definitely makes her one of the best sword cavaliers, and she also has near trace with her slot B skill. It's not really as good as a flat Canto that Brave Seliph has got, but still, having some kind of near trace is definitely good as a retreat option, and she can get the true damage out of it, and she essentially has the dive bomb effect with this slot B skill. Legendary Nanna is seen a lot in summoner duels because she can just bust through a lot of the frontliners by ignoring their damage reduction, and she's very common there, but also in arena she is just really incredible unit. Nanna's fodder is decent with attack speed menace and attack speed push 4, which you could get at the same time. Push 4 is not the best lottie skill, as we have the cat skills, unity skills, clash skills, so there are a lot of other options, and it also has the recall damage, which many people don't really like. And the menace skill is going to be helpful on a cavalier, but if you're infantry or flyer, then Oath 4 skills are also something that you can run. Legendary Deirdre is a very strong blue mage nuke, especially with the distant counter Dragon Sacred Seal that we have got, and also a top tier Farsave unit in Duoduma. So with her effective damage against dragons, and the fact that she can disable adaptive damage makes her a pretty good unit to be used against a lot of the dragon units, and she can also nuke really hard with her weapon and her Circlet of Balance special, which does provide her with the miracle effect in her player phase and also against the ranged units in the enemy phase. So she's going to be a pretty strong unit against a lot of the dragons, and especially in arena she can take on a lot of the ranged threats pretty easily because of having this kind of miracle to fall back on. The new null follow-up Sacred Seal can definitely help Legendary Deirdre without really sacrificing her slot B skill, and her miracle is not really as strong as some of the other units, but still it's something that she can fall back upon, and it is something that she's got over her daughter Legendary Julia. As for her fodder, she does have Stillwater 4, which is only really needed on units who have some kind of visible resistance check. But if you don't really need this, then you can just get the tempo skill and the menace skill at the same time, and this is going to be useful on slow mages and slow dragons. Legendary Caeda, despite being a rather new legendary unit, has fallen off a bit in my opinion. She does have her weapon with the binding necklace built into it, and also counter 2. She also has the effective damage against armor and cavalry units, so that can help her with the instant vantage that she can get against the armor and cavalry units with her slot B skill, and then she can also get the vantage status. When she's going to be working out, she's going to be really good in like arena and arena assault, but when she doesn't and she falls off against many of the other opponents, it is going to be a bit polarizing to use her. She is going to be functioning mainly in arena and arena assault. That's what she's made for. A lot of people did use her in Summoner Duels as well, but I have seen her usage fall off quite a bit there as well, and I don't really see her that much honestly. As for her fodder, she does have Distant Storm, which is pretty helpful for any kind of other Vantage unit just so that they can get the attack in both of the phases, and also the chip damage, which can help them be in the Vantage range. An attack defense rain can be obtained at the same time with Distant Storm if you already have Distant Counter on that unit, but overall her fodder is going to be a bit niche. Seiros is a 7 slot Anima Mythic unit, and because we have Arvel now, her value has definitely decreased a bit because Arvel is just a much better 7 slot unit. So Seiros is not going to be seen all that much, especially for the players who already have Arvel. And outside of Aetherite's defense, Seiros doesn't really stand out too much as a dragon. I mean, you could use her in Summoner Duels as if you have some kind of raid boss that's also a mythic unit who can benefit from Wings of Light, but that's pretty much the extent of it. And when it comes to her fodder, we already have Dragon Wall in the Divine Codes and on Halloween Rhea, who has Attack Resistance Unity, which most of the Dragon Wall users are going to be needing over Mirror Impact, which is just a player phase option. Ascended Celica is a really solid colorless mage and also extremely unique because of the Null Guard and the Miracle built into her weapon. And with the fact that we have got attack speed finish now, she can actually function with an infinite miracle build, and she can even run a very strong AoE build as well with double life and death. So she's pretty versatile and does things a lot differently than a lot of the mages. And falling into the range of Soul of Zofia is not really all that hard because she does have that miracle. The miracle that she has got is kind of similar to what Ymir can provide, but its HP threshold is definitely much better at 25%, so this can allow her to basically loop her miracle effect with the healing of attack speed finish 4 and mystic boost, and this can be a really fun playstyle because she can get the null follow-up out of Soul of Zofia, and she also has the null guard effect, so she's always going to be able to retaliate back with like a 1 cooldown special like Moonbow or Ruptured Sky. As for the fodder, she does provide you with one of the best support skills for an infantry unit, an infantry null follow-up, so it can help you free up the slot B and the Sacred Seal of your allies that would want to have null follow-up, and it's an incredible fodder opportunity, especially if you already have a supportive infantry unit. They can just double down and also run this skill. Legendary Micaiah is a pretty strong wind legendary nuke with that 42 base attack and her weapon, which can provide the effective damage against armored units and cavalry units. Her effect with the Desperation 2 is definitely a bit awkward, but at least she can get the guaranteed follow-up attack with this weapon, so that is pretty good. She does have Prescience, which can give her damage reduction in her player phase and also in the enemy phase against the range units. So she's going to be pretty destructive in the player phase, but in the enemy phase, she cannot really tank a lot of the units because of not being all that fast and also being susceptible to a lot of the hard-hitting nukes that do have null follow-up and especially are on the physical side. She can definitely do quite a bit of damage to far-safe tanks, especially if they are not Ascended Edun, Brave Hector, or Rearmed Grima, and they still are weak to armor effective damage, but still they can just run Hardy Fighter, Aegis, and Deflect Magic, and there's really not much Micaiah can do to pierce through that damage reduction. Legendary Micaiah, just like Legendary Caeda, is mainly like an arena and arena assault unit, and you're not really going to be seeing her too much in other game modes like Ether Raids or in Summoner Duels. Micaiah's fodder is not really all that impressive. You can get Fury 4 and join Distant Guard at the same time, but Fury 4 is present in the Divine Codes and it's only really needed for specific like Wings of Mercy Beacon builds, and there are other skills that you can just run on your units. Join Distant Guard can be helpful for taking on the ranged units, but we just have a lot of other options with the Oath 4 skills, Time Pulse, and many of the slotsy skills that you can run over this skill. Bramimond as a Dark Mythic has definitely fallen off a bit, especially now that Yuna has got her amazing and chaotic Weapon Refine and Remix, and she's just a lot more annoying as a non-7 slot Mythic unit if you really want to use in your Dark defense. And Bramimond does get stopped by a lot of the far-safe tanks, and Impenetrable Dark is good, but again it doesn't really stop far-safe from triggering, while Yuna can still be an annoying unit because of the debuffs that she can do to support her whole team, which Bramimond cannot really do and is mainly going to be focused in the combat. Bramimond's fodder is not the best with lull attack resistance and attack defense push 4 at the same time, but mages don't really have too many options, so lull attack resistance can still be decent, but it has been available on Young Leon, who was a 4-star seasonal focus. Ymir is a very unique unit because she can provide the Drive Miracle with her Ever-Living Domain to the allies within 2 spaces, and this miracle can only work if they are at 75% HP or above, so it's not like the regular miracle, but still it's a pretty good option so that you can survive with 1 HP, and she can also give you the healing and get rid of any kind of penalties with her weapon after using any kind of assist. So she definitely has a lot of usage in Summoner Duels S and in Ether Raid's defense Chaos, and also in Ether Raid's offense whenever you use any kind of Vantage unit, because even against the Hardy Bearing units, as long as you're at exactly 75% HP, you can actually use Ymir's miracle to survive that Hardy Bearing unit and still Vantage sweep, but you're mainly going to be seeing her in Summoner Duels S and in Ether Raid's Chaos. So she can, allow someone like Ascended Fiorm to survive Duocron, for example, in Summoner Duels, which is not really possible for her to do on her own without really changing a lot of things in her base kit. So Ymir can be a pretty good support unit with a lot of far-safe tanks like Ascended Fiorm or even like Valentine Lucina, especially with the stuff that you can do with the assist skill and just heal up the HP and get rid of the penalties. When it comes to the fodder, she does have attack resistance unity and the attack res near trace. So the near trace skill is only really useful for the flying and cavalry dragons, and attack resistance unity is definitely a lot more useful on many of the units. Dagr is a 6-slot light mythic unit, but when we have got Asker, Ash, and really strong light mythics which can open up the 6th slot, but outside of Ether Raid's offense, she's often gonna be getting overshadowed by her sister Note, who also has the Pathfinder in her weapon and actually has a bonus doubler weapon, and she can also get the damage reduction out of her slot B skill. She is missing null follow-up, but we do have the null follow-up Sacred Seal now, and it's not really all that hard to just have the external null follow-up so that Note can provide the frontline support in something like Summoner Duels or Ether Raid's Chaos. But Dagr can still be useful with that Pathfinder built into her weapon, and she also has the Spectrum Unity built into her weapon as well, so she doesn't really care about any kind of debuffs, and Sun Twin Wing does give her the null follow-up along with the speed and defense debuff, so she can function well with that and can also function in Gale Force teams, but she doesn't really have minus and special cooldown, which would have been perfect to function in a Gale Force team. But yeah, having Pathfinder is definitely her main selling point in an Ether Raid's offense mythic. Hell is the final unit out of this banner, and she is a Dark Mythic unit, and she's definitely overshadowed by the other Dark Mythics a lot. Her weapon does have Miracle, but nowadays we have seen a lot of really strong unit with the Miracle effect, and her weapon doesn't really give her any kind of extra stats. She can provide the support with Inevitable Death, and I suppose can be fun with Mystic Boost Sacred Seal, but that's pretty much it. You're not really going to be seeing her much outside of her bonus season, and she is in need of a refine and a remix. She can run Mystic Boost 4 now, so that's at least good, so that she can just loop her Miracle and also get the attack debuff and have her Sacred Seal be used for some other skill. Her fodder is not the most impressive because we do have tier 2 distant counter skills, so I guess this could be used as a prerequisite. And guard bearing is not really all that useful on many of the flying units because it's only enemy phase and it only gives you the damage reduction on the first combat in the enemy phase, so there are definitely other slot B options that you can run. This was definitely quite a long video to make, but I hope you all enjoyed my comprehensive analysis nonetheless. And if you did, then make sure to share this video with your friends if they are trying to pull on this banner. And I went over a lot of the options for the newest units. And if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using Super Thanks or by becoming a YouTube member down below as well. And make sure to subscribe for more FEH videos, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Elm being on this banner color sharing with Embla. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.